That's a very good question. In fact, we see a lot of customers have a contractor come in based on just a foundation crack in the basement, a normal settling crack that maybe gets a little bit of water, maybe it's just an eyesore and is something that needs to be looked at, or just some general guidance as to how to proceed on what to do with it or not to do with it. And they'll have contractors come and look at it, including us to evaluate it. And there are some people who come out and will do a laser level measurement of the foundation, and come to find out, your foundation would be off by maybe 1/4 inch in one direction, 1/2 inch in another direction. And the conclusion there would be, oh, the house is sinking. And this crack is, just a symptom of the house sinking. You need to spend $50,000, $80,000, $120,000 on resupporting the foundation. The reality is that when you put a laser level on a foundation, you're going on the assumption that it was laser level perfect when it was built. And the reality is that's just not the case. If you think of how a foundation is built, you have the forms, which are imperfect forms that have been sitting on the back of a truck, being driven around for years. They are generally leveled off to the best of the ability of the forming contractor, and then they pour the concrete in there, and then that concrete gets troweled off and is not always perfectly smooth and flat across the foundation. And usually it's the work of the contractor installing, the home contractor, the home builder installing the rest of the foundation, pieces in the house, that will have to level things off from there. So, going on the assumption that it's off in one direction or slightly off in different directions doesn't always mean that you have a major settling issue. Most vertical foundation cracks are simple, just settling of less than a 1/16 of an inch. If you think of concrete is extremely rigid. And when it cracks like a piece of raw spaghetti. It's hard to really kind of sort of break it. So if that house were to just settle into the soil a little bit, even if it's a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch, that stress will typically cause a vertical foundation crack, which is what we see in just about every foundation around here. So just because it might be off a little bit doesn't necessarily mean that you have a sinking foundation. So what we always look for is to see, well, what other symptoms are you seeing here? Simple thing you can do is, if you see a foundation crack, run your hand across the top of the foundation. If it's off by a 1/2 inch or more, yeah, you have a major settling issue. But that's not going to be the only place that you see this issue. You'll see it in the plaster, you'll see it in windows and doors, and you'll see it in the roof. And also just keep in mind that given the age of the house, you may have just cracks in the plaster anyways, just from kids slamming doors or poor paint jobs where they used improper caulking. Or in some cases, you upgrade your HVAC system and now you're running air conditioning all summer, you're running forced hot air in the winter, and it's actually drying out the home. And so the swelling comes down and it pops different areas. So just because you see a foundation crack or you see cracks in the plaster up top doesn't always mean that you have a house that's settling in a manner that you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars. My recommendation is that if it's something that you have a suspicion that you have a settling issue, have multiple people come out, send photos, use the evidence of living in the house as to what you're seeing, because an issue that you see in the basement will cascade all the way up to the roof line. You cannot have just the foundation sink and not have it pull other parts of the house with it. I have a house in my neighborhood that had this issue. It was off by 9.5 inches in one direction. So they had a major settling issue. You could physically see it from the street. It wasn't something that you could just maybe do with a laser level. So it's something that you can visibly see, and you'll have visible issues inside the home as well. So if somebody's telling you that, a foundation crack is, needing to pier a whole house or support a whole house with underpinning, take a pause, because that's a major project. And it could be simple as repairing the foundation crack, stabilizing what's there, and monitoring it for a period of time. Those options are always going to be available in the future, but what isn't going to happen is if you leave it alone, it's going to just continue to get worse and can potentially cause that in the future. But $1,000 repair is a lot easier to manage for most homeowners than a $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 repair that may not be needed. So just be very careful on whether or not the laser level of the foundation is truly an issue, or if it's maybe going on false promises that it was maybe never level to begin with.